In this video, I'm going to go a little more deeper into lighting in Unreal. This should get you started a little bit further with lighting so you have some pretty decent lighting, but we're not going to go into any advanced topics. So if you watched the previous video of setting up this scene, it should look familiar. If not, you could go back if you wish to watch the previous video about using the modeling tools to build like a real simple block out. The first thing we're going to look at are some settings in our project settings to change. The first one, we're going to switch out the type of lighting that we're doing to something that's a little bit easier to work with and will probably be a little bit gentler on your computer, especially if you don't have that great of a computer. The other thing we're going to turn off is auto exposure. I personally really don't like auto exposure. I kind of prefer just to do my own lighting rather than have that turned on. So if you're not quite sure what auto exposure is, it's when we, first let me go out. And you see how it kind of dimmed because it was too bright and then it got dimmer. And then when we go inside of here, it's going to start dark and then it's going to slowly lighten up. That's auto exposure, where the camera is kind of automatically adjusting how, if it was like a real camera, be, affecting the size of your aperture to let more light in so that it looks better. I don't like the auto exposure, so I'm going to turn that off. So how do we fix both of those? We're going to go to settings, project settings, and first let's change the lighting. So we're going to search for, at the top here, global illumination. And right here, dynamic global illumination method, we're going to switch it from lumen to screen space. And then let's turn off auto exposure. Again, back up here, let's start searching for exposure, EXPOS, and we should be able to find it. We're going to just uncheck auto exposure and make sure that this is set to manual. All right, so now we're kind of more in control of our lighting, and it should work a little bit easier, especially if you don't have, a crazy computer that can handle lumen. So when I do my lighting, the first thing I really usually do is I delete out any of the lights that are kind of automatically put in my scene. This goes for Unreal as well as Unity. I prefer to start from nothing and then add my lights in. It's not really a great method to kind of start with, some lights in, add a couple, then tweak them and try to get, to where you want to be. It's easier if you kind of start just from nothing and start one at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and delete out this directional light. I did have some other lights in here, like these point lights I added. And I'm also going to delete out everything that was given to me at the start. So the entire lighting folder provided, I'm just going to delete out. If you need to kind of, like, oh no, I can't see anything, excuse me, and you need to orient yourself, we can always come up here where it says lit and switch this to unlit in case you need to like place lights or do something before we begin. So the first thing I'm going to show you is, well, let's do this. Let's go back to lit. And before we actually do any lighting, let's fix some of the lighting problems that we have. So I'm going to pretend that I do have some lights in there. Let's see if it'll throw the error. I'd like to try to show you how to fix this before we delve into lighting itself. So I'm going to just build lighting only. And hopefully it'll throw those errors even though we don't have any lights in our scene. And yes, if we use our modeling in here, or this might even sometimes happen when you import an object so you don't quite import them in correctly. We get these errors of object has overlapping UVs. Light map UVs are overlapping. It has a problem with that. The reason is when we bake lights, it does need a second light channel in order to do that bake, because we're basically almost making another layer that we're going to kind of multiply on top of our texture layer to get like our lighting information. So if we don't have that second light channel, it might default to our first light channel, and the way that we built these originally were kind of ugly. Most times people are not, unless there's a certain reason to, creating their own second light channel on their objects that they're bringing in anyway. But normally by default, when we import our objects in, that is usually checked for it to generate our light map UV channel. But since we did create them in Engine, we didn't really have that opportunity. So I'm going to show you how to quickly fix that. So let's clear those out and let's locate where these objects are. So I did create these using that modeling toolkit. So if you don't quite remember where those are at, you can always select it, and then under static mesh, we can click to browse to where that is. So it does create kind of like this generated area where it's going to drop all of those objects in. So this is where we're going to come in and fix them. And I'm going to show you how to fix one of them. I'm going to double click it so I can go into its, we can kind of view it. And we can see the UVs right here. And we can see that we only have currently one UV channel on there. And that's not really going to work. So to fix this, we're going to come over to the details panel and we're going to look for LOD 0. LOD stands for level of detail. We don't necessarily need to worry about what an LOD is or how to generate them or how to fix them at this stage. You probably honestly, I don't even think you really need LODs, a full LOD system for white boxes for what, for what its purpose is. But this is where we're going to fix that light map issue. So LOD 0, build settings. We're going to click generate light map UVs on. And honestly, probably its settings are fine. The big one is destination light map index should be set to 1 by default so that the Unreal Engine will use this new light map UV, or the new UV for its light map, because by default, UV channels start at 0. So, 0 is for textures, 1 is for light map. So once I click that on generate light map UVs, we click apply changes, and then we look, we can see we do have that second, technically UV channel 1 done for us. So we're going to save that, and we just have to make sure that we're doing that for all of these items. It might take a moment, but this is a nice way to do this. So I think I already did this one. Let me just make sure. Let's see. I think I did it. Yeah, I already did this one. But I'm just going to go through and quickly do this for all my objects. Don't think we can do it all at once. No, I don't think it'll let you do it all at once. If you know of a faster way, I would definitely be interested in doing this. When you work in Unity, it's a slightly different setting to do this, but you still also in Unity need to have your light map UVs. So let me just quickly go through and generate them. But again, if you do import objects, they should already be applying these. But luckily, I don't have too many to do. And now we should be good to go. We can always check that I got them all by rebuilding that lighting. Oh, I still have some errors. I forgot. I apologize. I forgot one more step that we do need to do for this in order for it to work. We're not too concerned about the object has wrapping UVs. We're not too concerned about that. Just these light map ones. In order to fully fix it, I forgot one step. Over here in the details, search for light map. We have to change underneath general settings, advanced light map coordinate index. We have to switch that to 1. By default, it's not doing that. So let's save that. Sorry about that. So I think that's just under advanced. Let's see, light map. It's just easier to type in light map, general settings, advanced. Let's switch that light map coordinate to 1. Save those out. If you're interested in tech art, this would be a nice thing. Oop, I already fixed this one. A nice thing to try to make a tool for, so we don't have to do it manually. Almost there. I think this is the last one. Did I get this one? Nope. Let's try that. Okay. Let's do that big again and see if we got rid of all the errors. Build lighting only. And it completed without errors, so we are good to go now to actually start lighting our stuff. We'll start by adding back in our skylight, and I'm going to show you how to set that up. Just in case you do want to add that, maybe you have an exterior, maybe you just want to take advantage of some of the settings with it so that you can kind of control how dark your darkest shadows are. So we're going to go ahead and go to lights and add that skylight into there. And if we were to just hit our bake now, and let me make sure I know where I'm at. If we were to just bake this out, just lighting only, we can see that it's not going to actually do anything. And that's expected because we do have to set some settings on here. The first thing I would recommend is underneath, let's see, light. Where are we? Sorry, I lost myself. Well, first let's set it to movable. This will make it so we don't actually have to bake it in into it. Because remember, we have our static, our stationary, our movable. Skylight set to movable works pretty well. But what we really need to change is the source type. We're going to change it from the captured scene to a specified cube map. Remember at the beginning of this video, I did talk about how this is meant kind of for beginners and just to get you going to have some pretty decent lights without worrying too much about going into crazy detail about things. So if you do want to get into more advanced topics, obviously this is some area that you'd want to finesse a little bit more. It's still not going to work. What we need to do is actually give it a cube map, which the way that this works is it takes this image and it uses it kind of as a way to illuminate the scene based off of what's in it. So for instance, if we put the daylight on, we can see that we get kind of like a dim, sky kind of look. It has a little bit of a bluish tint to it. We can control these by adjusting the intensity, so we can make it a lot brighter or a lot dimmer, like maybe like a 0.2 for super dim, but then our shadows aren't so stark. I would experiment around with different possibilities for these, but the one that you might be mostly interested in is this gray light texture cube, because this is a very just even sort of light. A little bit strong, but the idea is if we take this white one, we can give it a color so that, white light is very boring. White light doesn't really exist in the real world. It should have some kind of tint to it. So like for instance, I can give it a nice kind of cool blue, like a dimmer blue, so that our shadows have, the darker areas have a little bit of like blue undertone to them. It is strong. We don't want to just rely on this for our overall lighting. This is, again, just kind of like that ambient dim one. So we can take that intensity scale like way down. Like if we cut it in half, it's still a little bit bright. So I might even drop it down to like a 0.2 or even lower so that we have kind of this, effect of it's dim, but our shadows aren't going to be, it's not so bright that we can still add extra lights to it, but our shadows aren't so dark. It feels a little bit more natural. If we do want to add in a, well, first I want to try to talk about a problem you might run into, especially if you are using these built-in blocks. Like we use the the Unreal modeling kit to do that, and then we had to fix this UVs. There is still a slight issue with it, and I kind of want to address it and show you how to fix it before we get too far into this. So I'm just going to add in a point light, and I'm going to switch this over to a static light since we don't want too many stationary lights. And I'm going to do my bake. And we're going to see what happens with this bake. And it looks very strange. This isn't what it's supposed to be, even though we did give it our second UV light channel for this. There's still kind of a weird setting that is like affects this, and that's how big of a size each of these get with our light maps. Right now, if we change the view, we can go underneath lit, optimization view modes, and we look at the light map density. We can see that it has a very strange density. Because this is based, we should see a much more reasonable pattern on here of how like a checkered pattern like this grid on here, but we can see how very large it is. And that's why our lighting is having a problem, is because of that, like our base lights. So the easiest way to fix this and this is mostly because, of the style of mesh that this is, but this might be something that you might end up fixing on, your own meshes that you import in at some point. We're going to select our item, and then in the search, we're going to search for light. And what we're looking for is this overridden light map resolution. So we're going to click that on, and we can see that it almost instantly fixes that, because this is how much resolution we're getting on the light map, and we're getting it so low that it was hard for it to even register that it has, it is receiving it. So I'm going to actually just kind of cheat and select all of those and make sure that they are all checked so that we have that nice checkerboard pattern going on. We could, if we needed to as well, adjust these on like an individual basis. Like if we saw that we needed more resolution for here, we could bump this up to like a higher number, but we probably don't. But this is a way you might end up fixing this on your own if you find that the resolution of your light map is too low, or maybe it's too high for some reason. Like if you have a really distant object, we wouldn't need it to have a high crazy resolution on that light map if it's like kind of off in the distance and you needed to bake it anyway. So make sure that you fix that. Again, this might not be an issue. It depends on the style of of model you have. Like it might not actually be a problem. But if you do end up getting some weirdness, that is how you fix that. So let's do another bake real quick just to show you that this is working. And we can see we are now getting that nice resolution. Since we overrode that, we are getting a nice level of lighting. So we can finally go ahead and really light this scene. So I'm going to delete that out. I know I just put that in, but I want to start with a directional light. You know, if you have, you know, windows or any kind of exterior, you're probably going to have some form of directional light, just because this is going to be your sun or your moon or like your general light like that. So, you know, if we're just doing a pure interior, you wouldn't necessarily need a directional light. But since we do have an exterior, we're going to just kind of work with this a little bit. This position doesn't really matter, but I'm going to rotate it. I want to be able to kind of have it peeking in through like the top like that. And we're going to switch this to a, oops, actually let me rotate it around the other way. There we go. Something like that will look nice. And we're going to switch this over to a, I would suggest either keep it as a movable, like make it a movable, or maybe a stationary. Since it's the sun, it might actually move around. Ooh, it's, so you might consider just keeping it movable. But let's build out that lighting again. I do need to change the color. Again, don't like white lights. I like it to have at least some kind of tint to it. We at least got that out. The reason we see this is I accidentally have a little gap in my geometry. I didn't realize it, so you can kind of ignore some of those. I don't really want to go in and fix it since that's not really part of the video. So let's go give it like a warm sort of tint. We should be good with that. I'm making a video. Close the door.
I'm going to paint it for you.
A what?
I'll paint it for you.
Did my package come?
I'll check in a minute.
No, someone will drive up with it. In the backyard, though. Don't follow them. Now we can start to work on our interior lighting. The two lights that you're mostly going to want to be working on with your interior lights are going to be your point lights and your rect lights. Rarely, if ever, should you worry about spotlights. Spotlights are literally for if it's a spotlight. Like a street light or like a can light on the ceiling, or, you know, a spotlight on a stage. Only use spotlights for actual spotlights. Otherwise, you should be lighting your spaces with a rect light or a point light. I'm going to start with a rect light. These ones are probably my favorite lights. They work very similar to area lights that you would find in Unity, where they're like a, almost like a LED panel, or like a panel light. So they work, you know, the way that they work is it kind of points, you know, it has the light rays coming from how this box is set. So we can even give it a little bit of a barn door, so we can kind of direct it a little bit more. But this is going to give you a much better look for like a fill light than trying to do a spotlight, because the shadows are going to work better. Everything just kind of works better with them. But let's see where we're at with just one. We'll put one in with its kind of base settings, and let's just build it out and see what it looks like. Even though I do plan to have at least two in this space, I want to see where we're at with one. The key to lighting is just building lights up one at a time. We don't want to just drop in a whole bunch and assume that it's going to look good, because it probably isn't. And you're going to spend a lot of time kind of tweaking and adjusting to get all of those lights working together correctly. Let's see. I think I want to move it up. I can start to give it a color. I want it to be like a nice kind of warm, or we could go like a spooky, greenish, sickly tint, like we're in a horror movie. But let's do some nice lighting. Let's give it kind of like a warm. I'm gonna actually give it a little bit of a dark value. I kind of like to play with my lights, not just saturation, but also value to really get the color that I like. Yes, we can mess with the intensity, but I swear I get some more interesting looking things and closer to what I need by sometimes changing that value of the color versus just the intensity. We could, make the attenuation a little bit smaller if we wanted. We could always change the width too, width and height. Maybe our panel light is a little bit bigger than that because I do, want just maybe 2 in the room. I would give this then to the environment artist, and they could like put like a fluorescent tube in the ceiling. So let's bake this one out and see how we're doing. And, that's pretty good. Remember, we're going to put multiple lights in, so the idea isn't that it's going to illuminate the entire space. But I'm pretty satisfied with how this looks. So I'm just going to do, have it selected, hit Control C, Control V, and then I'm going to move it over so that it has the same settings since they're supposed to be the same lights. Let's see. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm just kind of eyeballing it because I am doing this kind of quick, but we could go to our top view and really make sure that those are lined up well. But I think that's going to be good enough. So let's now bake this out. Lighting. Oh, I am sorry. I forgot to change a setting. I'm used to this. We need to switch them to static. We don't want them to stay as stationary lights. Let's do that and rebake it. Build lighting. And now we have our 2 lights. Let's run through and see where we're at with actual... And, it is static, so it is not affecting the player. We would need to switch this to stationary or movable if we did want it to affect the player. But I'm not too concerned about that at this point. Practicing with getting some of these, lights working in a good bake is sometimes can be harder. Let's up the amount, maybe drop this up to a 10. And build one more time. And that should be pretty good. It's a little bit of a dank room. If we wanted it to be brighter, we could add some more lights. Maybe in our space we do have like a table lamp or some kind of weird... Let's pretend we have like a weird kind of glowing in this corner. A weird kind of glowing like ooze or something like that. Or something kind of weird's going on over here. So I'm going to add in a point light. Let's do that to kind of help illuminate, or maybe there's like glowing mushrooms or something. Something more fun is over here. Let's switch it to, well, we'll keep this one stationary, and we're gonna first change the color. We'll do it like a purple. We'll pretend it's, no, we'll do green. We'll pretend it's like a glowing mushroom, a green glowing mushroom. Let's take down that radius. Or maybe it's radioactive waste or something that's emanating from this one spot. And let's leave this like this and bake it out and see what it looks like. And we can see the lights kind of playing off. You can barely even tell that this has a tint to it. But, the way that it combines together looks nice. Let's run a character over there now. So we have our fully stationary lights, and then we have this light that we can see is actually reacting with the player. So, we see that nice glowing ooze from over there. Okay. So that's kind of it for the video. I just kind of wanted to show you how to get your lights working and to start to play with them. I don't want to extend it out too far. We would need to go out into the other rooms and figure out what we're doing there. Honestly, though, at this point, this is kind of a little bit early to be lighting. We don't have any kind of visual idea of what's supposed to be in the space, where the lights are, the kind of mood yet. So technically, better lighting should be done after, the environment artists have had a pass at this. But I just wanted to give you some tips on how to set up your lights, especially if you're using the modeling tools and they're not quite taking your bake correctly.